Hello everyone, welcome back. So, what's happened to the summer? Where is this summer? I mean, it's nice and sunny now, but it's been really quite cool and wet, windy. So a lot of the warmer loving crops, like tomatoes and things that I've planted out, really aren't doing very well. Other things are doing well, like this apple tree, and it's got a lot of apples on it, and I might have to thin them out a bit as well, take some of them off to let the others grow on. It's like here we've got 3 quite small apples, so I'll take 2 away, leave 1. But it was getting to the point where the limbs of the tree and the main stem here were actually folding over and they were going to break. So I've put this stake in here temporary. Could do with being a better job, but get the rhubarb and that harvested at some point, make a bit more room when these potatoes come out, and I can get in there and do a more permanent setup. But everything's coming on quite well in this area. It's the warmer loving stuff that's not. So let me show you around. So at the far end of the garden here we've got a plum tree which isn't showing any signs of fruiting, but it's only been here a couple of years, and I have recently pruned it as well because it was getting quite closed in on itself. So hopefully that'll continue to grow and give us some fruit as time goes on. It's actually growing a lot more this year. Now it's got above the fence and it's getting some sunlight. Got rhubarb here. We've got so much rhubarb, it's amazing, and we are going to have to harvest it soon. We've had some rhubarb crumbles and things, but we're going to have to harvest it and get it frozen. The Jerusalem artichokes that I planted in pots just down here, they're not doing anything. I must be the only person that can't grow Jerusalem artichokes. On this side we've got main crop potatoes. So in this area we've got pink fir apple, and they're coming along nicely. And then further along we've got King Edward, and most have come up, some haven't. And it's just been a really strange year, I've found, so far, with germination of lots of things. And yeah, we had a really wet spring, and now we're having a cool summer, and yeah, it's not ideal by any means. Further along here, these are some stir-on onions left over from last year, and I've probably got 6 or 7 down here that I've deliberately put in a group. The idea being I'm going to let these flower, and hopefully there'll be some pollination going on with the bees and what have you, and I might be able to save the seed for next year. Now this bed up to about this point here is Ailsa Craig onion, grown from seed, sown in early February, and some of these are starting to bulb up now. Interestingly, the ones that are further this end of the bed, the ones that end are behind, and I'm not certain why that is, to be honest, because that end of the bed gets more sun. However, that is how it is, and now that they are starting to bulb up a bit, I'll probably water them once a week with a seaweed, diluted seaweed feed. That said, if we continue to get the rain that we're getting, watering them on top of that seems a little bit pointless, but I could always put some 6 times fertiliser, just sprinkle some over the top of the bed and let that wash in with the rain. So in this bed where the onions stop, the beetroot start, and I left them in their seed trays far too long. and the leaves went completely red, which is a sign of they've run out of nutrients. However, I planted them out probably 2 weeks ago, and the leaves are starting to green up again. So there is hope there yet. And then here we've got celery, sown from seed in February, and we have lost a few because of the slugs. We've got the slug traps out all over the garden, and we haven't suffered too badly, I must say, this year, because I got these traps out really early in the year, and I got the compost spread on the beds early as well, and that allows the frost to kill up some of the eggs and the slugs and the snails and things, and by getting the slug traps out early, I've caught quite a few before I planted stuff out, but we are still getting some damage for certain. Now, under this netting at this end, we've just got some salad leaves which were spare, and I've put them in here because they've got the space here, and I'm going to let them grow on. If we take them early and I need to use this space for something else, that isn't a problem. And then what have we got here? We've got kohlrabi there, and here we've got chard, and this is coming on quite nicely actually, not suffering too much from the slugs, so we could actually start to eat some of this now. And we have been having quite a few mini harvests from the garden lately, salad leaves and radishes and things like that, so it'd be nice to start tucking into this too. So at this end of the netting, these are cauliflower and calabrese, and this was a second sowing of calabrese that went out. We have got some more that I'll show you later that are further along than these, and there's a few extra cauliflower there as well that I sowed as spares. They've gone in to fill any gaps. So yeah, these are coming on okay. In fact, they're starting to form small heads on a couple of the plants. So down this centre bed here is all the garlic, and this is Solent white garlic, and it's doing better at that end, I must say, and it's coming to the end now. You can see it's starting to yellow off a bit and die back, but I'm going to leave it a bit longer. I've seen on social media quite a few people are harvesting their garlic already, and obviously it depends where you are, the growing conditions, you know, when you planted it, etc, etc, but I'm going to leave this just a bit longer, another few weeks maybe, and see how we get on. Certainly some of them, the stems are so thin, that it's just, there's not going to be anything there. But further up that way, it does look a bit more promising, but I don't think it's quite ready yet. So in here we've got curly kale, which is doing really well, and spinach, which is now starting to bolt, but we're still eating the leaves. There's no problem with that. But I'm really pleased with the kale this year. That's normally it gets obliterated by slugs, but again, I think those extra efforts early in the year with the slug traps and what have you has paid dividends. And here we've got red cabbage. That one at the back there is looking a little bit beaten up because a magpie somehow got caught under the netting, and I came out early last weekend, and as soon as I saw it I let it out, obviously, but in the process it had trampled all over everything and it's broken a few of the leaves, but I don't think that's going to harm the plant. And these are starting to form little hearts, so hopefully we'll get some. These are cauliflower here, and then right at the far end here we've got more calabrese, and these are now starting to form small heads, so I've got to keep my eye on these now, because I find that when they start to form heads, You can look one day and they're this sort of size. You look the next day, you've got a full head of broccoli. You look the day after and you've got flowers. It's bolted. So need to keep my eye on that. Okay, potatoes. So in these pots that are down here, we have pink fir apple and King Edward, and they're doing okay. I've been watering them when they've got dry, obviously, but we haven't had too much of an issue with that. In fact, we only have some very small water butts at the moment, a wheelie bin and a blue barrel, that's it. And we've only filled those once with the hose pipe this year, so far. We've had enough rain and rainwater collection with those two small butts so far, really, to just get by. And that just sort of shows you how wet it's been. Last year, we were filling up those butts probably once a week. Over here, we've got new potatoes, so we've got Lady Crystal in these lower ones, and Charlotte in the ones up there. There is some dieback starting to happen now on the early potatoes. They're starting to pale in colour. Some of the stems are falling over. Some of the leaves are starting to yellow, and they're coming to the end. But I'm going to give them another week or two just to let them finish off. I have had a dig around in the compost. There are some nice potatoes there, but there's still a bit of growth in those yet, under the ground, not above ground. And to maximise the crop, I'm going to leave them a bit longer. Certainly the Charlotte at the top there, because I'm doing an experiment on those with different fertilisers. So going to let those carry on for a bit. May harvest some of these at some point, just for a nice meal. So for those of you that follow the channel, you might have seen the video where I built this strawberry tower, and they have actually now started to fill out a bit and come on. I've actually got a potato growing there. That's obviously a seed potato that was in the compost. So they're starting to put some runners out, which I really don't want, to be honest. I want them to grow the fruit this year. But I might actually leave that and let it get down to here and get it to root in that hole there. I'm not expecting much from this year at all, but next year when they've settled down, it should be good. As I've said, lots of rhubarb. I've got so much rhubarb, we're going to have to do something with it soon. Down here we've got some marigolds that I've got to get planted out in the beds just to attract the pollinators. I've also got celeriac that needs to be put out somewhere. I just don't have anywhere to put it, I don't think, at the moment. And I've got a few pyracanthus cuttings growing. These were literally taken as hedge cuttings, and I put them in a glass of water until they start to develop roots. Then I've put them in some compost, which I'm keeping damp all the time by bottom watering. And as soon as they start to put on any new growth, then I'll just treat them as you would any other plant and water them as needed and pot them on. The idea of these is they're going to grow up the fence as a security barrier, really. Now these are my marifat peas, and they're coming on fantastic. Made this little raised bed for them earlier in the year, and this is my third attempt at growing these. I failed twice last year, but got a lot of pods coming now. Still a few flowers, but quite a few pods. And some of these are almost ready to be picked, I would say. Just need to swell a little bit more. Let's find one that we could have a look at now. You cannot beat peas straight off the plant. Let's have a look at this one. Like I say, they need to swell up a bit more yet. If I could give you taster vision, wow, they are amazing. Now one of the big problems with the peas is the pea moth, and what it will do is make a hole in the pod, get inside, lay its eggs, and then the grub or the maggot lives on the peas inside. So when you're eating peas straight off the plant like that, or when you're podding them in the kitchen, just have a look, make sure there's no holes in the pod and that there's no grubs inside. I'm sure they wouldn't do you any harm if you ate them, bit of extra protein, but not everybody's into that sort of thing. So we've got broad beans here, quite a bit of black fly in places. I just need to get a squirty bottle and blast them off the plant. Some of them will crawl back up. The other thing you do is you get your thumb and squidge them, but it's not a major deal to get rid of them. There's quite a few ants on these. Now if you see ants on your broad beans, don't worry about it. They're not doing any harm to the beans. What they're doing is harvesting the secretions that the aphids leave, and they take that back and use it in their nest as a food source. So the ants aren't doing anything to the plant. They're after what the aphids leave behind. Ladybirds are fantastic. If you can find ladybirds, put them on your aphid infested plants, then they'll really help, because they eat aphids. Still got a lot of flowers coming on these broad beans, so hopefully we're going to have a good harvest of pods and beans when they've come on a bit further. Monge too, these are great. So these are in the pea family, but instead of podding them, you just eat the whole pod. Really nice. And we've had quite a few of these now for our tea on an evening. I leave some of them to fatten up, because they then are the seeds for next year. Let them dry, keep them through winter. So these are stir-on onions grown from sets. These were put out in March, and doing great, starting to bulb up now. So again, I'll be giving these a seaweed feed if possible. You'll probably notice as we go around, we've got the odd lettuce, salad leaves floating about, and I've just been putting them where I can squeeze them in. Red Baron, these were sown from sets as well, and we like red onions for salads and stuff, but they do tend to bolt really easy. We have had one that's bolted already, so we've eaten that. In fact, there's one there that's bolting. It's starting to form a flower, so I'll just take it now and we'll eat it now. Even though it's really small, we can still eat it. You can see there the flower forming on the top. And obviously don't forget, you can eat the leaves too. Chop them up small. So in these last two beds we've got leeks. Sown from seed, February time, in seed trays and then planted out. And they're doing okay, although not as well as I would expect. And like I say, I've struggled with so much of the different stuff this year. I'm really finding it quite strange. And you know, sort of germination rates and growth rates have been really poor. And I don't think it's just me. I've seen a lot of other people struggling with it. So it must be the weather and a combination of things that's slowing things down this year, I think. So carrots. I've even struggled with carrots. I never normally struggle with carrots at all. And these were sown back, March time. And they are, you know, they're growing carrots. But the germination rate was so poor. You can see there's not really that many in this row. There's only 2 or 3 in this row, and that was this whole row sowed. And the same with these that I sowed later. You can see how thin the rows are. And these aren't really old seed or anything like that. They're, you know, fairly new seed. So I've sown some more here. And that does look slightly better germination rate. And again here, and again here. Now, we're not getting a massive problem with slugs in this bed. So I don't think it's a slug that's coming along and eating the seedlings. I just think it's really poor germination. And I'm just having to keep sowing things to try and fill in the spaces. And it's the same problem with parsnips. I've sown this area several times, and I know parsnips are notoriously bad at germination. You know, that's common knowledge, but this is ridiculous. These are new seeds, and normally this area would be completely filled with parsnips, you know, with the foliage at least. But this is what we've got. These are parsnips. And it's as though this year things either didn't germinate at all, or germinated and then just stopped. They just stalled. And I can only put it down to the weather. I can't think of another reason, really. I've sown all of this area a few weeks ago with parsnips, and there are lots coming up now. But I'm probably 2 months, 3 months behind where I would normally be. And yeah, it's very strange, I must say. Now, this bed is the Rule of 10 garden challenge. How much food can you grow in 10 square feet? And the potatoes are now coming to an end. Some of this lettuce could be pulled to thin out the rows. We have got leeks in there, spring onion in there, and this mange too, which refuses to stay up there. I'm going to have to tie that up. And we haven't harvested anything from this yet, but it's about time to start thinning out some of these salad leaves. And the potatoes aren't going to be in there much longer. And the idea is to weigh everything that comes out, and just to see how much food you can grow in this small area. So this is the salad bed, salad leaves and lettuce. There's a combination here of mixed salad leaves and iceberg. And that's all this bed's for. It's near the back door. We can come out on a night, grab some leaves, make a salad. Over here we've got French climbing beans, which they just don't look well at all. This has had homemade compost put on it at the beginning of the season. There's plenty of nutrients in there. They're growing slowly, but they're just a pale green. They're not looking particularly vibrant. And I'm guessing there's only really 2 things that would cause that: temperature, or how much nitrogen is available in the soil, how much goodness. And because I've put compost in there, I can only put it down to the temperature, that it's just been really cool, probably on a night time borderline cool for some of these beans and what have you. Now today is warmer, hopefully the weather is going to warm up, but we need some good amount of sunlight, good strong sunlight, warm temperatures to try and turn this around, because for a lot of these crops, if it carries on for another week or two like this, they're not going to make it. And that shows here with the tomatoes. I planted these out, they were really healthy. They went out and the temperatures were nice and warm a couple of weeks ago, and look at them now. It just turned really cool, very windy, wet, cool, and they've just stopped growing. They've just stalled, and you can tell by the colour of the leaves and everything, they're not happy. I think tomatoes are quite possibly going to be a total write-off this year. And it's the same with the ones I planted in there, when I cleared all the weeds out, made this temporary bed. These tomatoes were really healthy. They're not particularly healthy now, and I don't think they have grown at all in the last 2 or 3 weeks. I don't think they've moved. They've just stopped. So we need better weather. Now in the greenhouse I have got some tomatoes as well. Now these were kept in their original pots a bit too long, they weren't potted on in time, and they are not looking great. They might come back, they might, but even in this greenhouse, because it's not particularly in the right place, it's north facing, it's still pretty cool on a night, or has been. This one's not too bad, but yeah, I think tomatoes this year are going to be a write-off. We do have courgette. I've sown, I don't know how many courgette this year, maybe 4 or 5, and this is the only one that we have, and it's not doing great. The warmth loving crops this year just haven't performed. The cucumbers, again, potted them on last week, and they stalled, and now they're starting to grow again. You know, I think potting them on has obviously helped, but we need those sunny days and those warm temperatures to really make them go on. And we're middle of June now, so that should be much bigger than it is. So as you can see, a mixed bag. Some stuff doing really well, like the peas and the onions, things like that, and the calabrese, etc. And other things not doing so well, like the courgettes, the tomatoes, the cucumbers. And there is a definite divide between the plants that prefer cooler temperatures, like your kale, spinach, all those sort of plants, and those that like warmer temperatures. And I can only put it down to this very wet spring that we had and the really cool summer. We've had some hot days, I get that, but generally it's been pretty cool, hasn't it, for the time of year. So that's my take on it. This is what we've got growing. It isn't a write-off by any means, and we're going to have some lovely food out of it. So thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed already and you like this sort of content, then please do. Cheers.